everybody, and welcome to CI Stories this morning. How's everybody doing? If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. Today, we're excited to talk to Nicole KleinRichter, and we'll be speaking with her in just a moment. Just a couple of housekeeping things. I believe I got to check the date. Give me 1 second. I should have had it already ready, but I was distracted. We have our next CI Live towards the end of the month, and it will be with Greg Gross, and it will be on Thursday, the 27th. So in 2 weeks, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So look forward to that. And also, if you don't know, our Comprehended conference is going on right now. So if you're interested in joining us, I'll put the link, comprehended.co, up on the screen for everybody. So you can go to comprehended.co and register for 3, 6, 9, or a 12-month access pass. All of the classes are pre-recorded and online and accessible now, so you can watch at your leisure during your pastime. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And if you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and put them in the comments, and I'll make sure that Nicole gets them. And let's go ahead. So we have got, let me go ahead and switch my screen here. I want to welcome Nicole KleinRichter to the CI Stories stage. How are you doing today, Nicole?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad you were joining us today. And a couple of things about Nicole that are really interesting. She has been teaching for 30 years. She retired and then came back out of retirement. She used to teach in Las Vegas and is now currently teaching in Washington. And she has taught both Hebrew and Spanish. That's an incredible combination. We don't get very many Hebrew teachers around.
I bet not.
Okay, so want to tell us a little bit more about yourself other than what was in your bio before we get started?
Sure. Like you mentioned, this is my 30th year teaching. I never meant to be a teacher. I did not major in education in undergrad. I majored in Spanish translation and literature, and I thought I was going to walk out of the door and have a job at the United Nations as a translator. And it didn't happen. Someone needed a Hebrew and Spanish teacher, which is, like you said, a weird combination. And I started teaching at a very, very small private school. And we grew it from about 11 students to over 150. And just, kind of, it just sucks you in teaching. Left, like you said, decided I was done, and then came back because I missed the classroom and I missed the students. I'm also a mom to two and a pit bull rescue person. So typically people will drop dogs on my doorstep and say, "Here you go." That was also by default. I don't know how that happened, but no, loving life up in the Pacific Northwest, and not any closer to retirement than anyone is right now, but still excited to go in the classroom and teach Spanish.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I just rescued a Belgian Malinois, which is new to me. I've had hounds, so I've had hounds all my life, so this is a new experience for me. And they call them Maligators for a reason.
They
She
do,
is in her
yes.
biting phase, and we're trying to
Yeah.
break that from her habit. And missing the classroom, that's something else I can agree with you there. Everybody says, after you've been in education for so long, why are you not going for administration or something like that? And I've had no desire. I
No.
started teaching late. I started teaching at 30. So I had done a previous career mostly in the airline industry. And whenever I left and moved up to a more administrative or a more managerial position, I got bored as I like
Yeah.
to be in the thick of things. And so I don't think I would like to be an administrator. I want to be in there with the kids. And I don't think, administrators say, well, we can still affect change from up at the top. And I don't think you can as much as a teacher does when they're interacting with the kids on a daily basis. And so I
Right.
do miss the kids. I look forward to that. I don't mind self-learning like PD. I don't mind that, but I'd rather be in the classroom with kids than be in an all-day PD session. I just find
All of
myself
us
where I get my energy.
all of us teachers are the worst students. We all sit in a PD and we do a million other things like our students do sometimes. And, you know, it gives us a really good glimpse into how we must be perceived sometimes. I feel like, okay, no one wants to hear your voice for 55 minutes. Let's do other things. So I agree with you.
And I think the big thing is what that tells me a lot of times is that it has to be relevant.
Hmm.
And if it's not relevant, we are looking for other things to do. We had a PD. This school district I'm in now, I just changed school districts. We have like two PDs before school and then two PDs during school, one in the fall, one in the spring. My last school, we had six PDs and four of them were within the school year, and they weren't very applicable. Last one we just did, we had one about racism. We're having an issue with some racist terms being used and some racist what do you call it, graffiti put on our school. So we're taking 2 school days to address it with our students about that, and making it more inclusive place, because our school has 43 different languages represented on our campus, from all different walks of life. And so we want to do that. And so we did a PD about how can we do this, and getting ourselves more comfortable and getting out of our comfort zone to speak about racism and derogatory terms and stuff like that, and really get into a lesson that we, as a whole team of 150 teachers, come together, that we all can work behind to help our
Right.
kids become better citizens of the world. And that was relevant. Nobody was doing anything else during that time because it was
Right.
so relevant and it was important to all of us. And I think that's the thing for our classrooms and for PD. You have to make it relevant. And us being world language teachers, 9 times out of 10, what they're doing, what they're teaching us, doesn't apply to us.
Well, and also, being a language teacher for 30 years, I know I'm only 25. How is that even
Yeah.
possible? I started when I was 2.
Yeah.
So we need to make it, not only relevant, but meaningful. It needs to be authentic.
Yeah.
Um, I always hear, when am I going to use this? And I haven't heard that since I've been implementing comprehensible input. It's more, oh, this is amazing. I can use this. I can go to a restaurant. I can go to a Spanish speaking country. I can go to a Spanish speaking part of my community and actually put these into, applicable situations. So that, I think, is the beauty of, being a language teacher who uses comprehensible input.
Yeah. So that brings me to my first question. When did you, how long have you been doing CI before you switched over?
Okay, so crazily enough, the Hebrew program that I taught was called Tal Am. It was a brand new program developed by these two wonderful women in Canada. And I opened the curriculum, had never been a teacher before, and I thought, well, there's songs and there's games and there's activities, and where's all the grammar? Where's all the, drill and kill that I did as a student?
Yep.
And it just wasn't. And I got to go to a few conferences. I was one of the first teachers ever to use this program in 1995. And I found it to be incredibly eye opening as both a second language learner and a second language teacher. I learned Spanish at a very young age because my biological father's from Spain. But then I went to a Hebrew day school that taught in both Hebrew and English from age 4 to 10. So as a second language learner, I thought, well, gosh darn it, why I didn't have this? Where was this? When I was in school. Um, and that's kind of what opened my eyes to comprehensible input. I didn't know it was comprehensible input. I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
But I soon realized, throughout my journey as an educator, oh, that's why. That's why we used the graphic novels. And that's why we used the songs. And that's why we did the activities we did. And that's why it wasn't explicit grammar, because they wanted us to, again, implicitly combine grammar and vocab and all these things that you need to learn a language into this program. So 95 was when day one, it was comprehensible input without even knowing it.
That's awesome. I had a very different experience. I started teaching in 2001, right after 9/11. I took over from a sub because they had too many students in a classroom. So I was hired in an emergency permit, never even had teaching school. And that first semester, I sucked. I was horrible. I was doing the grammar. Teaching like I taught because, like I learned, because I took in high school Spanish, French, and German. So I did that and I continued in Spanish and German through college. Got my major in German. I switched from Spanish because Spanish was a dime a dozen and German was a little rare, so I went with that way. Never been able to use my German teaching, unfortunately, but so that first semester really, really sucked for me. But I knew how to learn a language, well, at least learn it from a book. But when I go back and I think about how I actually learned the language to actually be able to use it, it was never from the textbook. It was always some kind of anecdotal, like meeting somebody and talking with someone, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I taught it from the textbook and I sucked. I sucked. Everybody knew I sucked. The kids knew I sucked. I was bored. They were bored. It was awful. And then I found Blaine Ray during winter break.
Good old
I
Blaine Ray.
found, yep, and I sucked in everything on my own, no training. I just got his books. I did what I could learn on there, and back then there was no webinars, there was nothing to go online learning. The first class I could get to was in the summertime, so I just winged it for the second semester. I started it, and it just blossomed from there, and I haven't looked back. And as I look back to it, as parents, we are natural language teachers. And then we go to teaching school to learn how to teach a language, and they battle that out of us.
Right. And
Because,
it is the kill and drill syndrome. And I was fortunate in that I had some really great models in my experiences with comprehensible input, but long before comprehensible input was even a thing.
yeah,
This was in the 70s for all you cats and girls out there listening. And I really realized that my language teachers, both in Hebrew and in Spanish, used CI without it being a formal program.
right, yeah,
And it's like you said, you can, and I always feel like, we're not here to demonize grammar. We're not here to demonize vocab. We're not here to say like, oh, you cannot use a textbook. You can't. You can incorporate certain aspects of that into your teaching as long as you make it, like I said, meaningful, authentic, practical, so that students don't feel like they're, like I went to school for 4 years and don't remember a word of Spanish.
yep,
How is that possible? I mean, we know how
exactly.
it's possible with the
Yeah.
attention span of some of our students. Sorry. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. But you don't want that experience for them, and you want to make this language learning more of an experience rather than a required course.
And I look at language education like the original Karate Kid. That, he didn't know what he was doing. He says he's like, I'm doing all these chores, wax on, wax off, paint up, paint down, not realizing that he was learning karate during that time. And so we're
Yeah,
doing the same thing with comprehensible input. And once they've got the language, then we can come back and refine it with the grammar rules. And it's the same way we
right,
learn our first language. No parent starts with the grammar rules. Nobody gives them a dictionary and a vocab list to work with. We
right,
talk, we read, we communicate with them. And then when they get to mid to late elementary schools, when they start incorporating grammar, but the kids are already somewhat fluent at that point. They can communicate ideas, they can understand ideas. And it's the same thing when Karate Kid the movie, after, all those chores, then he started learning how they applied to actual karate. And it's the same kind of thing. My
right.
old school was 100% CI. My school now, I'm the only CI person. So I have to use the textbook, but I just look for what do I have to teach, and then I find a CI way to teach that. And my
Sure.
kids
And
do just as fine on the exams.
there's so many great CI teachers out there. I think of like Diego Ojeda, Anne Marie Chase. I always look to them for examples, and I always think like, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, but maybe I'll just spin it a different way.
Yep.
So there's so many of us out there that have been doing this quite a long time and have a lot of resources. So I always say, if you're not sure of how to jump into CI, if you're just kind of, starting the process, look to people that have done it, look to people that are successful in it. There's so many people, with social media now, you can really
Yeah.
source who you need. I mean, I taught Spanish AP last year 100% with CI, which is like, how did you do that? I had a great model from Diego Ojeda that he said, you can do it. And it was eye opening to not have to follow that path of just the textbook, just the themes. It was amazing. So it can be done. I'm telling
And
you, it can be done.
yeah, and even the AP exam changed because when I started teaching, it was very grammar based, and it's not so
Mhm.
much grammar based now. And they didn't even care that you know all 14 Spanish tenses. They really want you to know past, present, and future. If you know past, present, and future and can manipulate those really well, you can score a really good score on that test.
We sneak the subjunctive in there just because I know, the subjunctive is like the cherry on top
Yep,
sometimes. So, but yeah, my students scored really well last year, and they were like, "This didn't even feel like an AP class." And I said, "I know," and that's where we
that's
hook
the whole
you.
point.
We hook
Yep.
you in. Yep.
When I taught middle school, we had a level three, a full level three in middle school, and I would start with the subjunctive right off the bat before even the future. I would start with just two simple phrases, si tuviera and si hubiera. So, si
Hmm.
tuviera un hipopótamo, ¿qué harías? And we would start with
Hmm.
that and just throw that in there. And they didn't even know what they were. It's just language. They were just
Right.
using language to
Right.
communicate. And it worked really well. And they were able to, get to use at least those basic little phrases in there. And then I would also in level one and level two intersperse the subjunctive. Instead of always saying a command, I would say, yo quiero que ustedes hagan. Yo
Hmm.
quiero que ustedes escriban. So they would hear that subjunctive. So it's not like, ooh, where did this come from all out of left field when we start
Right.
teaching in level three.
Well, and just like in Spanish one, I use preterite all the time. I use
Oh,
the
yeah.
perfect all
Mm-hmm.
the time. And you don't, I'm lucky that I'm working at a school where there's not a prescribed curriculum where they kind of say, just go. As long as the kids, end up alive at the end of the day and learn something by the end of the year, and you can show mastery and growth. So it's beautiful for those of us that have. I know there are teachers out there, and some of you might be, listening to this replay and thinking, well, I can't do that. My district has a prescribed curriculum. You can, you just have to figure out kind of where to insert it. And then just nod your head, smile, and wave when they're asking you if you're using that curriculum, because you are
Yeah.
using it. You're using it as a really good skeleton outline, but you're also infusing the different themes, the different topics. And, a lot of people say CI is a method. And I don't agree with that. I feel like CI is the vehicle
Mm-hmm.
for transporting and transmitting the language. So when somebody says, are you using the CI method? And Dr. Van Patten and I had a conversation about that. I'm such a fan of his.
Yeah.
Um, and he said, it's not a method. And he said, it's a vehicle. And I said, I 100% agree with you. It's, when people say CI method, we have to get off of that
Yeah.
track. We have to start looking at it as, this is like, I always tell my students, get on the train. If you don't get on the train, you're going to get left at the station. But it is really the CI train, and it really is like taking you on this journey of language that can be amazing.
Yes, exactly. And the way I approach it, because my school I'm at right now is very backwards, not in their thinking, but the way that they're still doing teaching, where the midterm, we finalized the midterm. Our midterm is next week, and they finalized it on Thursday this past week
Hmm.
because they're like, well, how far did we get in the book? And do that instead of backwards planning, which drives me crazy because I need to know how to prepare because I can't prepare my kids for a final exam, in a week. I need to know what I
Right.
need to be growing towards. So, and the final exam is very textbook based. I don't use a textbook. My kids never open up the textbook, but I look at the
Mhm.
scope and sequence of the
Right.
textbook. And I looked at what grammar do I need to teach, what vocabulary do I need to teach, and then I took that out and gave comprehensible input ways to teach that. So they do mesh together. It is possible, like you said.
Mhm.
And if they can do it in AP, they can do it in every level below that. And you can teach whatever you need to teach. And nothing
Right.
is hard because actually subjunctive in native Spanish speakers and native French speakers and languages that use it, they acquire it really early because They just need to know what it means. They don't need to know how all the different the rules are what make it all hard about it.
Right. And we, in my Spanish one, we're doing a project called Invent a Verb, because they always say to me, why is it so hard? Who made these rules? And I always say, well, it wasn't me, friends. I mean, I know I'm old, but I'm not that old. But it's just, it's just like English. Why can't we say things in English in a certain manner? Why do we have to put them in a certain way? Why is syntax important? Why is grammar important? Why is conjugating in English important? So we do something called invent a verb, and it kind of forces them to realize that language is inherited and it's passed down. It is not taught with a T chart, and it is not taught out of a book typically. Now, I had a student ask me yesterday, what is a verb? And they were a sophomore in high school. And
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
well, oh, let's do some English, because if we don't know what a verb is, we need to know how to, that
Yeah.
was a different Oprah show with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's something that can be, when teachers are like, I'm so scared to try this, I say, don't think about it. You could go off the rails a little bit. You could kind of tangent. Don't think about the grammar and the vocab. Think about the topic at large. If you're doing la comida, you're doing
Mm-hmm.
food. What do you want to do? Do you want to do a cooking project? Do you want to do a shopping? Do you want to take them? I took my students one year to a supermarket. Don't look at it piece by piece. You have to kind of look at the whole picture as like I say, like those digital mystery pictures.
Yep.
Reveal the digital mystery picture and then start covering it up. And then you can get to the nitty-gritty. But what do you want to do? Like what are your interests? And pose that to the students, see if they're interested, and then build around that. Because if you start looking at that, I have to include this, and I have to include present progressive, and I have to, it becomes an immeasurable task. But if you
Yep.
say, like, I'd love to do a cooking show, I'd love to have my students film themselves following a recipe, creating a meal, and then they can bring the meal in. It's something that you're like, oh wait, this is pretty organic. And I don't have to think about it so much. And I don't have to
Yep.
spend hours planning or grading, which is the other big part of CI,
Yep.
right? I don't know how many people are still on that. I have to grade. Man, I'm assessing every minute. Every minute of every class period is an assessment. And yes, there's a grade attached to that because,
Yep.
it's required, but I'm assessing you as you're popcorn reading, as you're movie talking, as you're
Yep.
running dictationing, as you're doing all these really cool things. I'm assessing you. So when teachers say to me, well, how do you give exams? I said, oh, well, I don't. There are no exams. Every day is an exam. Every day is an assessment. It's an ongoing, living, breathing thing in my classroom. So it avoids that trap of bringing home a stack full of things to
Yep.
grade, even in AP, even in AP.
Yep.
So, I think that's another beautiful part of comprehensible input is you're not saddled to or tethered to that. I have to grade an essay. I have to grade a
Yep.
paper. I have to, it's because I look at my grade book and there's 80 grades in there already. And we're 6 weeks in. And my other teachers are like, how? And I say, because
Yep.
every day we're doing something unique, meaningful, authentic, and I can grade that. I can
Yep.
use that as an assessment.
Yeah, the grading workload and comprehensible input is a lot less because I say we're more on in the classroom. So
Mhm.
I say you can either work in the classroom or you can work outside the classroom. And I would rather work inside the classroom when my students are right there, where I
Right.
can adapt and pivot as they're learning to find out what's working and what's not working, rather than teach for 10 minutes, give them an assignment to do, and then after they're left, now I got to grade that assignment. So
Nope.
yeah,
And
I don't do any of that stuff.
you learn as seasoned teacher. I always say I'm highly seasoned instead
Yeah.
of I'm an old lady in the classroom.
Yeah, I'm very
Um,
salty. Yeah.
Yes, I'm highly seasoned
Yeah.
and very flavorful. You learn that I don't want to do it. Like the kids are like, "Where's our test?" And I'm like, I don't want to grade that. So we're going to
Yeah.
do a project. We're going to do project-based learning. We're going to do an informal oral assessment. We're going to do, we played Jeopardy yesterday as a review. And then I stopped and they go, was that our test? And I said, yes, it was.
That's
And they said, that's awesome. And I said, right? You don't have to do a typical test. We played Jeopardy. How awesome. You got to collaborate. You got to communicate. You showed me that your minds were working and you were all in it to win it. And in a high school classroom of 21 freshman boys, let me tell you, I'd much rather play Jeopardy or Trashketball or any of those games and say, that was your exam, folks. Have a great day. And they walk out of there feeling energized. They walk out of there feeling like, well, I didn't have to study for that. Well, no, because you showed
yeah,
me with your language that you had mastery, that you had growth, that you had progress. And yeah, you got to throw a basketball into a trash bin, and that was your exam. So,
yeah,
you know, it's a daunting task and it is performative. I'm not going to lie, not many teachers, if you're a teacher that is very much, I'm going to sit at my desk, there's a little performance aspect with CI. A lot of people say anybody can teach CI, and I go, well, you have to have a little bit of spice to do it, to really get into it and to get into the meat of it, but you can learn. And that's the
yeah,
beauty of a mentor teacher or someone that has been around for a while. And you say, I don't even know where to start. Come and see us. Come and sit in our
yeah.
classrooms. Watch the webinars. Watch the YouTube videos that are all over the internet. Watch how these teachers teach, and then you can model. You don't have to do it exactly, but you can really model what you want to do. But man, I don't take home anything.
I don't take home anything either.
I don't grade, and I always say it's going in the circular file, which is the garbage,
Yeah,
because, or else they say to me, "What do we do with this?" And I'm like, "Recycle it." I don't know. Aren't you gonna? Don't you want this? Should we turn this in? No, I don't need it because I can see what you're doing every day. I don't care to bring home 150 little pieces of paper with your 4 sentences on it. I know what you're able to do,
yeah,
and it just takes that whole level of stress as an educator off your plate. It really
yeah.
does. But the planning is definitely necessary. You have,
Yeah, the planning is there. That's where
yeah,
you do it. But I
yeah.
think that you put a little nail on the head there, where it's like when you are doing CI, you are connected with your students, so you know what they can do at any given point. And when you aren't using CI, you have a little bit of a disconnect. It might be a
Mhm.
time disconnect. They do an assignment, then you collect the assignment, then you do it. But there's not that you really need those pieces of paper to be able to see what they do, because you don't have that interaction on a regular basis to really know how your kids are, what they're able to do. Like, I can look at a kid and go, I can tell you where they are right at that particular moment. And my kids always complain. Oh, well, they don't really complain, but they're like, we don't do anything in class. I'm like,
Right.
we do. It's just, it's all
Right.
inside your brain, which is really, really hard, because they're looking for traditional school where teacher teaches, teacher assigns work, kids do
Right.
work, kids turn it in. In that way, you're right. We didn't do anything, but we're constantly learning a language. Can you not go and talk to someone in Spanish right now? So
Mhm.
you have learned stuff going along the way. It's not traditionally the way you do. Like, where's our homework? I'm like, no, I don't want homework. Why would I give you homework?
I also don't. And the best feeling for me is when a student is absent and they go, oh, what did I miss? Not, they don't come up and go, oh, what did I miss? They go, "Oh, what did you guys do yesterday? I heard you did, baile viernes. I heard you did música miércoles. I heard you did," and I'll say, oh, yeah, you missed it. Or I heard you did Jeopardy. I heard you did. So that's the best feeling for me, is when they come in and they go, I missed a game. I missed an activity. I missed a gallery walk. I missed something. And I'll say, you did, you did, but it's okay. And it's funny because I look at attendance. You can see attendance for all my students, and some kids just don't go to class, but they're in my class, and
Yeah,
they come every day because, they don't want to miss out, because then their friends are talking about, oh my God, we did this crazy activity in Senora's class today, and they'll tell each other, and then they'll come in and go, I heard we're doing, whatever we do in the day. I heard we're doing this today, and I'm always like, yeah, we're doing it. Let's go. So it's becoming the class. It's like I always say, we're a special little club,
yeah,
and you can be in my club, you can join my club. And if you miss a day, you really miss an experience. You're
Yep.
not just missing a day of work, you're missing an experience. So they want to come. And that, again, another facet of comprehensible input
Yep.
is you get to create this really awesome experience for
Experience.
students that they're like, what are we doing tomorrow? What do we, or someone said, oh, okay, what crazy thing is she going to pull out of her magician's hat today? And I'm like, it's not crazy. I'm a research based person.
Hmm.
I've researched this. It's real, but it seems like you're not doing it. And they go, wow, that went by so fast. And I would say, and there we are. And you're welcome. And tip your waitress.
Yep.
This is why we do what we do the way we do.
It's funny. We're on a 4x4 schedule, not my favorite schedule. So kids have to rush through a whole year and a semester. And
Mm,
I have this kid right now, and he's so happy because he's got a B, and it's not a false B. He's got a B in my class. It's the highest grade he said he's ever gotten. He failed out of middle school. He had Fs. First semester, another classes, all Fs, and I'm the only non F grade this semester. And we're at the halfway point. Next week is the end of the halfway point, the third
mm,
quarter. And he's elated, and he's like, I've already signed up to be in your class because we have a main high school, and then I'm in the career tech area of it, where kids spend half their day. They take a career in either culinary, construction, or agriculture for one of their classes, and then they pair up with an elective. It's either Spanish or art. And so he's like, I made sure that I'm getting Spanish back here at Bright, which is the location that I'm working at, so that he can get back in my. He goes, I have the most fun in this class, and it's translating to a better grade because he's
right.
paying attention, he's more engaged, and it's all that relationship building that we're doing and making it an experience, like you said, in the classroom that they want to. It's not school; it's
Right.
an experience.
It's an experience. And it's also, I encourage my students to bring in things. They give me suggestions all the time. They're
Yep.
constantly asking me, can we do this? Can we do this? And sometimes I say yes and let me think about it for a little bit. Or sometimes I'll say, maybe we have to wait on that because we're not quite ready to do that. Um, but it really is, it has been, I always say, like, if I didn't love the way that I teach, I would have to leave. Because
Yep.
the one question I ask in an interview, are we required to teach from a textbook? And
Yes.
that's the make it or break it question for me. And if the administrator says, well, yes, we use realidades, or we use, avancemos, I go, okay, adios, bye. I walk out the door because I realize that good CI foundational teachers can create this, like I said, like this club experience. It's kind of like this exclusive kind of thing. And the kids get a sense of pride and ownership. And I think that's important, is that they feel that they have control over what they're learning, as opposed to some other, not, listen, math, we need math in our
Yep.
lives, but they have no ownership over that. They have, they are prescribed to do certain things in their math class. In a language class, you can give them a little bit of that ownership, and you can say, what do you want to learn, and how can we incorporate that in a way that it's beneficial and meaningful and authentic, and not just, I love when the kids are like, let's just have a free day. And I'm like, okay, let's have a free day. We're going to play Book It. We're
Yep.
gonna do some sort of game. We're gonna do running dictation. It's a free day, but we just did a project and they loved it. But some of them wanted to kill me. It was the typography with the parts of the body, and I do it every year. And my students, it's great because you get to see the different sides of them. And there's some of my students that are so artistic. They just ran with this project and they were like, this is the best project we've done all year, because it shines. It lets
Mhm.
them shine in their specific way. And some kids are like, I hate this because I'm not an artist and I don't, but still they'll do it because they it's a fun project. And then we take a little assessment afterwards and they go, oh, I remember writing that. I remember filling in the waist with cintura, 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 cintura. And I said, do you see, like, do you understand the method to my madness? This is why it is what it is. And I'm not going to stand up here for 55 minutes. And I'm also not going to give you an assignment on Canvas for 55 minutes. I'm going to get you, I'm going to suck you in to where you don't want to leave. And some of them don't. It's all I can do to get them out of there. And I'm like, I got to go. Like, you have a
Yep.
class, I have a class, I have a
Yep.
meeting. Bye. And some of them are like, can we just stay in here? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
no. Or they'll come in. I don't teach first period. And they just come in and they're like, what are we doing today? And I have to say, you have to wait. I'm not going to tell you. And then they leave that room and they're excited. And
Yeah.
they're high schoolers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is working. We've got like
You
this is
got a hook.
actually, yeah, we got a hook. So yeah,
I
it's incredible.
it's funny when you say that, like the free time, like they always try to get me off topic, what they think is off topic. But I'll ask them, like, how was your prom? Like, prom is coming up right now. So we talk a lot about prom. They're like, what was your prom like? And I have, like, what we're supposed to do on the board, the little agenda, like, follow the rules. We have to put an agenda up on the board. And I'm like, I start telling them, but I'm telling them in Spanish. And it's even level
Right,
one and they're understanding. And then that's all we talk about all day is prom. And they're like, we won. We didn't do anything we were supposed to do. I'm like, no, I won because my only
right,
goal was to speak Spanish all period and make sure you understood it. So we
right.
we both kind of won in that. And I had a kid, one of the things I do that I love doing, it's the best part of my day, is I'm always looking for a funny story that I can write about a student. So I had one student who told me, he said, I was asking him, he wanted to be a chef. So I said, what kind of chef did you want to be? He goes, I want to be I want to open my own elegant restaurant. And I'm like, oh, and what do you want to serve? Well, he couldn't think of the word for steak, so he said cow, which was
Oh,
close enough. So good,
okay.
ding, 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 ding for, for using
Yeah,
circumlocution, right? But
yeah.
then I go, I have a story idea. So I wrote a story about him opening a restaurant for cows and
There you
serving
go.
different cow variety of food. And I had one of my kids who's, an average C kid. He's got a B in my class. He's an average C kid. He goes, why are English stories that we have to read in English so boring? And I come in here looking forward to reading a story in Spanish. And it's because I make these stories about you. You guys say something funny or do something funny. Like a kid brought out 3 different sized jars of Vaseline out of his backpack. And I'm like, what the heck is, you have three? I mean, he's got the big jar, the medium jar, and a little tiny jar. And he goes, well, they're all for different purposes. So I wrote a whole story about that. And it gets them involved. They're like, when is my
Right.
story going to come up? I'm always looking for ways, and I'm like always listening. And some kids are like, I don't want a story about myself, so I don't talk because anything I say could be used against me. And it's always a
Well,
fun
and
story, but that,
that's the ownership part of it
yeah.
is once they see that, I always say connection over content every
Mm-hmm.
single time. I will I will die on the hill of that, of connection over content. I
Yep.
will also die on the hill of I'm not working harder than you will. Let's work together.
Yep.
And when you give them the ownership, you've said, I value you, I see you, you're an important person in my classroom, you're an important person in this community, and let's make you kind of own your education. And,
Yep.
unfortunately, the traditional model of what we're doing in schools today, it doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. Kids can't sit for 7 hours and 11
Yep.
minutes in a classroom. And, somebody said, well, why are we doing this? And I said, well, back in the 1940s, this is what happened. This is how we created workers. In 2025, it just doesn't work. So
Don't
how do
seem
we
well.
get
Yep.
out of that model? Well, let's have you up. Let's have you moving. Let's have you owning your education. Let's have you participating. Passive observers do not. It does. I can't. Like
Yep.
everybody's going to do it. And one of my teachers, or one of the teachers at lunch yesterday, she said, "How do you get this particular kid to do things?" I go, "Oh my God, he's like the
Mm-hmm.
ringleader. He's like the court jester." And she said, "But he won't talk and he won't." And I said, "You've got to give him some ownership. You've got to make it relevant and meaningful for him because he will take it and run with it." And she said, "Man, I walked by your class and he was in the front of the room doing something." And I said, "Yeah, when you give them, well, again, and I keep saying this word, but it's true. When you give them their responsibility and the ownership of
Yep.
what they're learning and kind of control over what they're learning, they will want to be there. They will want to learn. It's when you take that away from them and you say, sit down, get your book out, get your Chromebook out. This is go to Canvas 4.1. Why, why bother? You may as well be online. You may as well be back in
Yep.
in COVID times. So giving them that piece of day from you where they can walk in that classroom and go, I wonder what we're doing today. And I can't wait to do it. I can't wait to see what she or
Yeah.
he does, because it's going to be awesome. It's going to be sweaty a little bit. Yesterday we did a little, corre en círculos. We did the running in circles game, and there was a lot of physicality. And one of my students said, "Why is it so hot in here?" And I said, "It's not. You're doing a game called corre en círculos, and it's part of the deal." But getting that physical brain brain body connection is huge for comprehensible input.
Yep. And it's true because my kids always go, we should get a PE credit for this because we're
Right.
always doing something in the classroom. I'm like, we sing a song. You got to stand in my class to sing. You got to stand up. We get to go. And I want you singing loud and proud. If I am not getting complaints from the teacher next door, you're not doing it right.
Right.
And so I get them, we got to get them animated, get them up, get them moving, get the blood out of their butts. And it really does help because you're, like you said, it's the brain and the body connection that we can't, my classes, we only have 4 classes a day because they're a block. They're an hour and a half each period. And
Hmm.
that's a long time to ask anybody to sit down. So
Yeah.
you
No,
got to
thank
get
you.
them moving. You got to do multiple activities. You can't do anything for a whole half an hour. It's, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes here, a brain break in the middle there to break it up. You've got to get them
Right.
moving and get them engaged with the language. And there's so many different things that they can do with the language and have fun at the same time and get
And
them
that's,
out and get them physical going and get their
yeah.
brains working.
And that's my goal. Like I don't know if I mentioned it, or if anybody is listening, as they know, I'm finishing up a doctorate in education and second language acquisition. And my goal is to go into school districts and revamp and kind of reframe how language teachers are working with their students, and really to give them the tools, because what we don't do in college preparation programs is we don't give teachers real applicable tools to say you can do this tomorrow. When you go into that
Yep.
classroom, you can do this. So my greatest dream in life is to be able to go into communities and go into school districts and say, listen, it is research based, obviously, but this really works. It works well. And your language teachers can be the most beloved teachers in your entire school, because if they do it with this intent behind it, and you don't even really have to do it well. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
you can kind of halfway do it and still be doing a great job if we just can get in that pre-service component. And I always say, like, I'd love to catch these teachers before they get that diploma. Like,
Yep.
come see me, come talk to me before you walk out and get your own language classroom. And I'll give you real applicable tools that you can put into your classroom on day one and go from there. And yes, you will create your own special sauce, but let me give you kind of the cookware to
Yep.
put it into, so that,
Foundation. Yep.
yeah, I mean, it's like, it's so much to me. CI is like so easy. It's so much easier than a
Oh
traditional
gosh, yes.
grammar. And people go, oh gosh, it's so much work. And I say, okay, so you're prepping on one end, but when you look at it long term, gosh, I always feel like I can walk in there with my eyes closed some days and still do a phenomenal job,
Yep.
or my hands tied behind my back, and still give these kids what they need. And they don't know. They don't know that I created a lesson in the shower. They
Yep.
don't know, because it's engaging and it's fun. And, that is my goal, Scott, is to just get into some of these PDs that are
Yep.
so, we good morning, everybody. Oh, I didn't hear you. Go away. Let me have, as a language teacher, some tools and some tricks and some real tips that I can put into my language classroom tomorrow that will get these
Yep.
kids engaged. And, unfortunately, we don't do that, which is why I started the doctorate, which is
Yep.
why I said, how can I do something to help other language teachers?
Exactly.
And I hope, listen, who knows, maybe I'll be on TV one day and I'll have my own. I don't know, my husband's always like, why do you think you're going to be famous at 52? Who's going to discover this? And I'm like, you never know. It could
Yeah.
be, Stephen Krashen himself could say, come on, let's it you never know.
You never know.
But it needs to happen. we need a revamp, we need a reframe of language education in the US, because these kids are craving it. And
They
once
are,
they get it,
and I agree
it's
with you. There's nothing in my teaching schooling that I use today. They
right.
even taught the Madeline Hunter version of the lesson plan.
No,
you know
no.
who First of all, who the heck has time to write a page and a half for one class period of lesson plans? And when they go, the teachers, you go, I'm going to spend 7 minutes doing, I'm like, how do you know how long that's going to take? What if
No.
I have kids who get it and it goes faster? What do I do if kids don't get it and it takes longer? I'm like, oh, my lesson plans are Google Slides. So I
Yeah.
just know when I get that activity done, the
Yeah.
next activity pops right up. That's, if
Yeah.
I don't get to that activity, guess what? That activity moves to the next day. I'm very fluid that way because I'm teaching kids. I'm
Right.
not teaching a curriculum.
Right. And you may spend 25 minutes, like you said, on a tangent. And you
Yep.
may do the one word image, and you may have them, there's so many times where they think they've got you because they've like, oh, we don't really have to learn today. But
Yep.
you're actually doing, I say evil laugh, insert here. You're doing what you wanted to do. You're just doing it in a way that they don't think is
Yep.
prescribed. And it can be, I always say, like, I walk in and I prepare myself, and then when I walk out, I think, well, this worked well, this didn't, and now I kind of have an idea going forward. But I never, should I say this out loud? Is this an outside thought? I never have a plan. I don't. I have a kind of a rough draft of what I want to do, but like if somebody said, "What's your lesson plan for the day?" I would say, "Uh-huh. Yep. There's I don't know. It could change. I could teach Spanish 2 third period, and then in fifth period go, well, that tanked. So we're going to just revamp what we were going to do
Yep.
and go this way. And I never feel like that's the other beauty of CI. I never feel like my classes are behind, because even though maybe period 3 didn't do this activity, in period 4 we did something else that's still, we were able to
Yep.
connect. But if you come to me and say, I want you to write me, like I'm doing an evaluation right now with my administrator, and she's like, write a lesson plan. And I went, oh, all righty. It's not going to be what you're going to see in the classroom because it changes minute to minute.
Yep.
And if Joey is having a meltdown, I have to pivot and I have to say, let's do this. But yeah, CI teachers, I feel like we all fly by the seat of our pants in a beautiful way,
Yep.
of saying, I never have anything truly that I adhere to, because you never know. It's
And
kind of like a surprise.
and you were afraid to say that, but I think that's good teaching because in Vegas, I don't know about you, but when I taught in Vegas, I had to turn in my lesson plan 2 weeks in advance to my administrator, an
Yes.
actual lesson plan. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's bad teaching because that's going to change at least 6 times before I actually get to that date on there, because
Right.
my kids sometimes are going to learn it faster, sometimes they're going to learn it slower. I got to keep adapting that. And so that's really a bad teaching experience. But if I go into a class and I have my idea what I'm doing and I'm doing this and it doesn't work, I adapt it in the next period. That's good teaching. Where if you are living by a strict pen and paper lesson plan, you're like, okay, well, it's going to suck the rest of the day and I'll have to revamp it for tomorrow. No, I can pivot right away. And us comprehensible input teachers, we have so many different activities. When I started, there weren't that many activities that we could do, but so
Mhm.
many have blossomed. There wasn't movie talk when I started. There wasn't picture talk when I started. So we have all these activities that we have now at our disposal that I can pivot in a second. I can go,
Right.
oh, my kids are talking about this TikTok video. It's a school
Right.
appropriate TikTok video. Guess what? I'm putting that video up and now I'm doing a movie talk on it. We can
Exactly.
talk about it. We can laugh about it. A kid told me I didn't yesterday about alley oop. I didn't know what that was, what an alley oop was. But it's this thing where uh it was people getting arrested, but they threw them up and then they got punched in the face. So we talked, I know, but it was cops doing it. It was weird. They were TikTok
That's
videos
hilarious.
that they were from the police cam things. But so we talked about that yesterday. And is that really appropriate behavior? We were talking about that, but I could show that video and then we can talk about that in the target language I didn't
Right.
plan for that because I had no idea what it was. But all the kids were talking about these alley oop videos. And so it
Yeah.
became a topic, and I could turn that into a lesson at that moment. It would not have worked if I go, what's trending today? Alley
Right.
oop videos, and I go
Right.
ahead and find it. They're like, it's no longer cool because Profave discovered it.
So yeah, there's that aspect of, like I said, flying by the seat of your pants in a beautiful way. Um, and a lot of teachers get really discouraged with that idea because they are that very prescriptive plan and method. And you can. And that's the thing. It's very malleable. It's very flexible. You can be that teacher that has that lesson plan written out. Let me tell you, as I said, I did teach in Vegas, and that administrator who wanted my lesson plans never got them because I said, I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. And she looked at me and said, how? And I said, because you don't know what these kids are going to come in with. And she said, well, you have to have something. And I said, my objective was always teaching Spanish in the target language on the board. It was always teaching the target language in the target language. That was it. There was no, this is what we're doing today. This, because I don't know, because they could come in and start talking, like you said, about some random thing going on in the world today. And we just do a one word image and we run with it. But it's learning and it's applicable and it's meaningful and it's fun and it's engaging. So lesson plans are non-existent.
Yeah.
And I failed and got a ineffective evaluation because I refused to turn in
Did you?
lesson plans, and I would not put an objective with a standard on the board, and I would not say to her what I was doing that day, and she gave me an ineffective rating, and I said, thank you so much, that means a lot to me, because I know that you don't know what I'm doing. And I got told, well, how was I supposed to understand your lesson if it's all in Spanish and I don't speak Spanish? And I said, oh, well, that sounds like an issue. That's the goal. We don't want, I always say, like, it's a secret, again, it's a secret
Yeah.
club. I don't want an
And
administrator coming in and knowing what I'm teaching because they can't understand me. And hopefully one day administrators will go, well, that's the whole point of a Spanish class.
yeah.
You're teaching target language. Like, I'm not supposed to come in and see objectives in English and plans in English. And it's unfathomable and unconscionable to me that we are still expecting teachers to turn in 2 weeks lesson
Yeah.
plans and go, here, I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. I couldn't tell you. I have a kid that's going to be gone for 2 weeks, and she said, Senora, can I have the plans? And I said, here, I don't know. I couldn't tell
Yeah.
you what we're doing in 2 weeks, like,
Yeah.
let alone what I'm doing on Monday morning. And she went, oh, I love you, but you're frustrating me because I want to be able to do work when I'm gone. And I said, don't do work, do an experience, keep a journal of your experience, and that will be your assignment, because that is what CI is. It's experiences, it's living the authentic and meaningful language as it lives and breathes. So don't even look at the assignments, keep a journal, take pictures, take notes, talk about a meal you ate on vacation, talk about an experience you had in Spanish on vacation. And she went, oh, oh, okay. And I thought, well, why aren't we doing this more?
Yeah.
Why are we trying to, you know, force things onto students? And it's because we don't know how to break away from that model of the 1940s. But CI really does. It
Yeah.
it it breaks that chain of whatever we were doing. Doesn't
You
work.
you mentioned two things I want to hit upon. You said about your administrator, like I didn't understand it because it's all in the target language. Well, I had my Vegas administrator, same thing. He goes, your lesson plans are in Spanish; they need to be in English. And I'm like, but I don't teach English. And number two, we had to turn in our final exams. And he goes, I can't understand them. They're all in Spanish. So we had to translate our final exam into English too. I'm like, I'm writing two exams now, and one I'm never going to use because you don't
Right.
speak a second language. And then the second thing you said about I'm going away for 2 weeks. This is what I love to do. It's a really fun activity. Kids really get into it. I have an extra Billy La Bufanda scarf and an extra gorro hat. So I give them to them. I say, take them on vacation with you, take pictures of them in different places, and then write two or three sentences about what they're doing in that place in the target language.
Yeah. We have
So
Flat
they're,
Billy. So
yeah,
like Flat Stanley, we have Flat Billy La Bufanda. And yeah, it they go, wait, I don't have to turn in all the assignments that I'm going to be missing. And I say, why would you? How can I expect you to do that if you're out with your family, especially, and this student's going to
Yep.
Argentina. I went, oh my
Yep.
gosh, you better take pictures and I want video and turn it into some sort of something so that we can show it to the class of your experience. And she said, you know what I'm most excited about? I'm most excited about using vosotros. And
Oh,
I said, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Because I do teach vosotros because I feel like it's necessary. It's not a, some teachers are like, meh, vosotros, only if you're in Spain. And I go, no, we use vosotros in other places too. So she said, I'm so excited to show off my knowledge to the natives. And I said, yeah, you're going to wow them. That's going to be
yeah.
amazing. So,
Yeah.
it again, when students feel like they're able to use something in a real world application, it doesn't become just a class. It becomes a way of their life and it
Yeah.
becomes a part of their fabric as an individual. And yeah, I feel like why can't we do everything? I don't know. I mean, maybe you can't do some things like that, but I had a math teacher observe a running dictation and he said, how can I do this? How can I incorporate running dictation into my math class? And I said, put formulas in the hallway and have them try to solve it. And then they have to run in. And
Yeah.
he went, oh my gosh, you're right. And I said,
I
CI,
had a
baby.
math teacher learn how to circle
Yeah,
because he
it's so
goes,
easy.
"What do we do next? Do we add the number or do we subtract the number here?" And asking those questions and getting to go there, so it helps them remember a lot more. So that's
Yeah,
great. We're almost to the end of our time, so it's been great speaking with you. What's
thank you.
one gem? We didn't even go to the script. We didn't have go through any of the questions there.
Which
You've
is
given
true
us
CI, true to
yet
form of
true
a
CI,
CI teacher.
but it was a great conversation. I learned so much from you. But what's one thing you'd like to leave um, the audience with? Because we do have about 5 people on right now that are live, and then we'll get a lot more on the replay. What's one thing you'd like to leave for them? And is there a way they can connect with you off, after the fact?
Okay, so what I'd love to leave language teachers with is it's only as fun, as engaging, as applicable, as meaningful as you make it. You do it can be done. It's not an impossible task. Don't be afraid to try out comprehensible input. Don't be afraid to dip your toe in that water because you've only done it a certain way. Look towards other mentors, other models. Like I said, I've been in this for 30 years and I'm always looking at Anne Marie Chase and Diego Ojeda. And I'm looking at people online that I value and that I emulate. Don't be afraid to ask one of your colleagues if they'd love to sit down and talk to you about it. There are so many people using this vehicle,
Yeah.
that you can, you really can connect with. Don't be afraid to just, even if you do one thing next week that is comprehensible input motivated, do it. Do it with and be fearless. And if it flops, it flops. And if it does really well, then you can build on it. And how can people connect with me? I'm really not a huge presence on social media. I kind of have been, wallowing in the pity of my dissertation for the last 4.5 years. I do eventually is connect with more people via Instagram. I do have an Instagram. It's Senora K Rocks, one word. So Senora K Rocks. I don't post a lot of teaching content on there just because I feel like, there you go. There's my Instagram handle.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of dogs on there. Um, it's just, my goal, like I said, is to try to do some speaking, do some talking with schools. And if people want to connect with me, I mean, you're welcome to put my email in there, which is bilingual1844 at Gmail. I'm always open to questions, especially now since I'm defending my dissertation. I'll have a lot of like 30 extra hours a week on my hands that I won't be writing. So yeah, you're connect with me, ask me questions. I'm happy to guide, help, mentor, whatever people need. And I always say my experience is not the experience in CI, right? All of us have different experiences. My experience is one of thousands of us that use CI as that vehicle for language.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. As anybody have any final questions, please put them in the chat before we go. Or if you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and put them in the comments. I'll make sure that Nicole gets them and get an answer back to you. It's been a great day this morning speaking with you, Nicole. I learned so much and just a different aspect of where everybody's coming from and different viewpoints. And that's why I like doing these CI stories, because I'm learning from other people and not people who are perceived to be gurus, because
Right.
we all know the Maestro Locas and the Blaine Rays, but these are and people look at those people and go, that's wonderful. I see what they're doing, but I can't do that. I can't be Blaine. I can't be, La Maestra Loca. I can't be, um, you know, anybody
Senorita
else.
Spanish.
I can only be
Yeah.
myself. So
Just
having
be you.
everyday teachers who are in the trenches, I think is really helpful and motivational for all of us. So I thank you
Yeah.
for that.
You said it. Just be you. Your kids
Yep.
they love you anyway. Just do you, do what makes you and them simultaneously happy, engaged, learning. And, I feel like if I can do it, gosh, anybody can do it. So, yeah, go with it.
I know, and I'm an introvert. I am a 100% an introvert. Once I get home from school, I am like shut in my room. I don't want to speak to anybody. But you wouldn't know that in my classroom because I have to put on an act, like you said earlier. And then we
Yeah.
got from 921 Leah's Heart. Thanks. Very interesting and encouraging. I'm so
Oh,
glad you think that,
you're
Leah.
welcome.
That's awesome.
You're
So with
welcome.
that, I will say goodbye to everybody. We're going to come back on the 27th with Greg. So if you are interested in watching that or get it on the replay, we'll be doing that 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And with that, I wish everybody a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.
Happy
Bye-bye.
Saturday, everyone. Relax.
Happy Saturday. Let's put that there.